I was driving the girls to soccer practice when I realized something was wrong. They were back there, alternating between chattering happily with each other, bickering, and competing to tell me something while telling the other to be quiet because they were talking now. All normal stuff that, at least on most days, was enjoyable background noise as I focused on driving and whatever else was on my mind at the time. But as we got off the freeway and started down the exit toward the soccer field, a new sound emerged from the back. A voice, high and soft, but unmistakably that of a young boy. We're gonna be late." My eyes snapped immediately to the mirror, and in its reflection I could see the girl sitting in the front row of seats like always. But instead of being followed by shadow and a view of receding road out the back glass, my eyes now went to the child staring at me from the second row of seats. I had to fight the urge to slam on the brakes. Instead, I slowed down, trying to stay calm as I pulled into the parking lot of the nearest shopping center. Stopping, I turned around slowly, half expecting the boy to be gone, just a temporary phantom of my imagination. Instead, he stared at me with the same confused look that my daughters did. He looked to be 6 or 7, so a couple of years younger than our younger daughter, but I'd never seen him before in my life. June started to ask why we had stopped, but I spoke over her, my voice even but strained in my own ears. "Son, why are you in our car? Did you get lost?" He frowned at me.
"What do you mean, Dad? I thought we were going to soccer."
I glanced at my daughters, who looked like I'd gone crazy. No, I knew how many children I had. That was absurd. And this stranger, he could be dangerous, young or not. Waving my hand at them and sliding the door next to June, I told them to get out of the car. The boy went to do the same, but I told him no. He was to stay where he was. The girls tried to complain, but I told them to hush and stand out front where I could see them. When they had, I called their mother. "Hey, hon, did you get them to soccer okay?" On the way still, but something's come up. Marcia, how many children do we have?" She laughed. I hope only 3. My blood went cold. 3? Swallowing thickly, I looked in the rearview mirror again. The boy was just watching me, his face troubled. Tell me their names, please." "Kevin, you're scaring me. Just tell me, please." "Okay. June, Allison, and Toby. Now tell me what's going on." My mind was racing as static filled my head. What? Is this some kind of joke? Is what a joke? What's going on, okay? Are Toby and the girls okay? We don't have a child named Toby. I said it as a hissing whisper, but felt sure the boy still heard it. I didn't care. I was growing scared and angry, and I wanted whatever this was to stop. There was a brief pause, and then, "Where are you? Like, right now, where are you at?" I glanced around. The shopping center right off the exit for the field, in front of that bakery we got Allison's cake at last year." Are the kids all okay and safe?" "Yes, of course they are, but I don't know what to do with..." Just wait there, okay? Keep an eye on them. I'm leaving work now and I can be there in 20 minutes. Do you need to stay on the phone with me, or are you okay to wait?" I frowned. She thought I was crazy. Maybe even dangerous. I wanted to feel indignant anger at the idea, but was it so far-fetched? I trusted her, and this was way beyond any kind of practical joke, so what did that leave other than something that was wrong with me? hand trembling, I rubbed my face. Sure, yeah, I'm okay. I'll keep all three of them safe until you get here. Don't worry. Marcia was there less than 15 minutes later, and she was clearly terrified. She left her car in the parking lot and drove us to her mother's to drop off the kids. Carolyn seemed concerned, but not about this little boy they kept calling Toby. She swept him up in a hug when the kids ran to the house, toting him inside with the others while asking how their day had been. The pit in my stomach just continued to grow as we pulled out of her driveway and headed toward the doctor. We were halfway there when I forced myself to speak. So I'm crazy, is that it? Marcia glanced over and gave me a worried-looking smile. No, you're not crazy, but I think something happened. Maybe you hit your head and you don't remember, or something is going on inside that's making you confused. I mean, shit, you don't remember your own son. Something had to happen, right? I looked away and nodded. Yeah, sure. I don't remember anything like that, but sure, it makes sense. We rode on in silence, and when we reached the doctor's office, Marcia got out right away and started heading toward the front door. I was halfway out of my seat when I remembered to get my insurance card out of the glove box. Opening the door to the compartment, I rustled around amid gum and car manuals until I found my health insurance card tucked into a holder with my card for car insurance. I was about to shut the door back when a piece of blue paper wedged against the back of the glove box caught my eye. I glanced up, but Marcia had already stepped inside. I could see her through the glass at the front reception desk, presumably letting them know that they had an emergency walk-in. Tugging the blue paper free, my stomach cramped worse than before as I unfolded it. I didn't remember it, but it was my handwriting on the note. Just one line. I only have 2 children. Hands shaking, I stuffed the note in my pocket and went inside, trying my best to act pleasant and calm as we waited for them to call us back. Marcia tried to make small talk and act casual, but I could tell she was nervous and scared, and I felt guilty because I knew I was the cause. My mind kept going back to the note in my pocket, but what did it really mean? Was it telling the truth, or just a sign that I had been having problems with my memory and reality for longer than just that afternoon? When they called us back, the nurse did some initial questions and took my blood pressure and pulse readings before telling us the doctor would be in shortly. Unlike most visits, this time he was actually in there quickly, his face concerned from the start and only growing more grave as he listened to my account and then Marcia's. When we were done, he raised his eyebrows and let out a long breath. Well, I see why you're both worried. It's probably nothing bad, and we'll get it sorted out, but right now it must seem scary. He smiled at me. But, Kevin, if it helps, I can assure you that you do have 3 children. Hell, Toby's on the same little league team as my grandson Devin. You don't remember any of that? I shook my head sadly. I don't. I want to, believe me, but I don't remember anything about him at all. He nodded. But you remember the rest of your life. You remember your other 2 children? Not just who they are, but you remember specific memories of them in your life. Sure. I mean, yeah, I do. And Marcia? You remember she's your wife, and you remember your life with her? Well, of course I do. Look, He raised his hand. Just bear with me, Kev. Do you remember your job and where you live? I nodded. Yeah. We live the next neighborhood over from you, and I work from home. And where did you grow up? On a farm with my parents and sister in Nebraska. Okay, good. So, any other gaps that you're aware of? Anything else you don't remember or feel isn't as it should be? He held my gaze as he went on. Feels strange or off or whatever? I shook my head. No, just Toby, I guess. He nodded. Good, good. His gaze shifted to Marcia. I think it's just a trip fault in the beta section of the last inurement cycle. Confused, I looked around at Marcia. What's he talking about? I didn't have time to scream as she stuck a black, squirming thing on my face. It latched on immediately, digging into my skin as my head filled with static again. Oh God, what were they gonna do? Their house? Are they actually painting it pink? I looked around to see Marcia peering skeptically out the living room window that looked out to the Robersons' house next door. I laughed as I went back to flipping channels. Who knows? He's half senile. And you've seen the nightgowns she wears when she's out walking the dog. We'll be lucky if they don't add yellow polka dots. She shot me a dark look. It's not funny. It'll be an eyesore, and when we go to sell this house, it'll hurt the value a ton. I nodded, trying to look more serious. Yeah, I mean, you're right. But we can always grow the hedges a little taller for now, and it'll probably be a long time before we move. It sounds morbid, but the Robersons will probably be dead by then, and maybe the next neighbor will have better taste. Marcia had been glancing out the window again, but now she turned back to me. Years? I thought we'd already decided we needed to move in the next few months. Feeling confused, I turned off the TV and looked back at her, trying to judge if she was joking. When did we talk about that? Several times. This house isn't going to work anymore, you know that. Frowning, I glanced over at the dark stain in the corner of the room. Because of that? I told you, it's not black mold and I can get rid of it. She looked over at where I was pointing and then back to me with an irritated stare. I don't know what you're talking about. I heard footfalls out in the hallway, and Marcia lowered her voice as she went on. But no, I'm talking about for them. Two young girls were running into the room laughing.
Daddy, will you take us to the mall?
I stared at them, paralyzed by the unreality of it all. Glancing at Marcia, she didn't seem to think anything strange was going on at all, as she was smiling at the girls and looking at me expectantly when I didn't answer them. Looking back at the children, I forced a smile of my own and nodded. Sure. Give me just a few minutes, and I'll be glad to take you. The bigger one came up and hugged my neck, followed quickly by the younger girl, who shoved the older one out of the way and gave me a kiss on the cheek as she said,
Thank you, Daddy,
and ran back out of the room with the other in tow. Marcia was laughing. They're getting along today, but they're 9 and 11 now. They're already getting where they snipe at each other more. And by the time they're teenagers, they'll need their own space. Sharing a bedroom at that point won't be good for them. Or us. Swallowing, I nodded, trying to keep my expression neutral. Yeah, I'm sure you're right. I guess I'll take them to the mall. My face felt like a mask as I stood up and left the room, and my chest was so tight it was hard to breathe. I think I'd covered it well enough, but how long could I go on like this? How long should I go on like this? Because I didn't want to scare Marcia or those sweet little girls, but I had no idea who they were. As far as I knew, we didn't have any children. I made it through the trip to and from the mall and dinner that night, but by 8 I said I didn't feel well and went to bed early. It wasn't a lie. I was terrified that I'd gone insane or had a stroke or something, but I also felt compelled to not tell Marcia about it. I told myself it was because I didn't want to worry or frighten her, but I was the one that was frightened. And the idea of her catching on that I didn't remember June and Allison? Well, it scared me even worse. She kissed me on the ear when she came to bed a few hours later, and I pretended to be asleep. In truth, I hadn't slept at all, and by the time I knew she was out, I was sliding out of bed and pacing the house. I needed to figure out what was going on, or I needed to get help. Maybe walking through the house and looking at everything would break something loose and give me my memory back. So that's what I did. I walked through the downstairs, recalling different memories of times we had there. Specific memories of being in the kitchen, or the hall, or the bedroom. Then I went upstairs where I had my office and where, apparently, the other end of the Jack and Jill bathroom opened into those girls' bedroom. I had memories from upstairs too, but just like downstairs, just like everywhere, June and Allison weren't in any of them. Not them, their room being a little girl room, nothing. Heart pounding in my chest, I trudged back downstairs and went and sat on the living room sofa. What was wrong with me? When did it start? Casting my gaze around the room, my eyes landed on the damned stain in the corner. How long had that stain been there? At least a month, right? Or was it a year? I didn't know that anymore either. But maybe I was wrong, and it was black mold. Seeping into my lungs and brain and making me forget things I should love and remember the most. Grimacing at the thought, I went and got a bottle of bleach and dumped some on a sponge. The smell was sharp in my nostrils, but I didn't care. I wanted this damned thing gone, and maybe if I could fix that, other things would come into focus. I spent the next hour scrubbing at it, but other than removing some old paint, my work didn't seem to affect the stain at all. Sad and exhausted, I took the bottle of bleach back to the hall closet and stuck it back on its shelf. It was then that I noticed a small patch of blue paper peeking out from around the edge of a bottle of window cleaner. Lump in my throat, I pulled it free and opened it up. It was in my own handwriting, though I don't remember writing it. And it said, "You don't have any children." Sucking in a breath, I read it again, my mind spinning at what it all meant, and the floor creaked behind me and I felt something was wrong with our house. At first, it seemed too good to be true. The neighborhood was nice and quiet. It wasn't far from Marcia's work, and there was room here for me to have a real home office instead of one side of the living room like back when we were living together in that crappy apartment. The mortgage, well, not cheap, wasn't bad either, especially not for a house in such good shape. But that was the thing. Last month I noticed a stain in the corner of the living room. At the time I thought it was maybe mildew coming through the paint or a bit of water damage from a leak in the roof the house inspector had missed. But it was getting worse over time, and it hadn't rained in a couple of weeks. It was almost as big as a man now, a looming shadow in the corner of the room that I hadn't been able to get rid of despite scrubbing it down twice. I wanted it fixed, but we didn't have the money to get someone to look at it yet. And besides, Marcia acted like she didn't notice it. She never explicitly said it wasn't there, but she would just kind of shrug and change the subject when I brought it up. Like it wasn't a big deal or she didn't want to talk about it for some reason. So I'd been trying to just ignore it for the moment, but it was hard, especially when I began feeling weird. It started with me waking up in the middle of the night. Sometimes I'd sit up in bed and not know where I was or what I was doing there. Hell, I'd been married to Marcia for 3 years and known her for 6, and there were times when I didn't know who she was when I looked over at the sleeping shape next to me. I felt like I was going crazy, but I tried to pass it off as a lack of sleep or night terrors. I always came back to myself after I woke up a bit, didn't I? And for the first few days that was true. But this morning I realized I was writing a note to myself on a piece of blue stationery I'd gotten as a gift a few years back from my Aunt Emma. Wait, was that right? Would it be blue or... My hand stopped mid-pen stroke as I got lost in my thoughts. When I came back to what I'd been doing, I'd read what I'd written so far. Marcia isn't your... Honey, what are you writing over there in the corner? Do you see it? The real estate agent looked over at where I was pointing dubiously before sucking hair in between her teeth. I mean, maybe it could use a fresh coat of paint, but I don't see any stain over there. She gave me a cautious glance. Kevin, if you have an issue, I can refer you to a handyman, but I need to remind you that I came over here as a professional courtesy. I go by my first name. I told you that, remember? She let out a small, discontented grunt. Sure, sorry, lots of clients. But, Scott, you closed on the house 3 weeks ago, and if you have an issue now, you'll have to take it up with the former owner, not our company. I grimaced at her. Look, that's fine, whatever, but I have a little dog named Trixie. A friend of mine was watching him for me while I moved in and got settled, but I'm ready to go get him and show him his new house. But if it's all fucked up with mold or something, I don't want him being around it. She gave me a waxy smile. Sure, I understand. Well, I'm sure it'll be fine. Either way, I don't see anything, so I really can't help much more. Pulling out her phone, she made a face. And I'm running late. I'll email you my handyman. Good luck with your pet and all. I heard the front door close as she left, but I was focused on the stain again. How could she not see it? Was she lying? Maybe, but as bad as it was getting, wouldn't I have seen some surprise even if she tried to downplay it? And why try to lie about something so obvious? I reached out and ran my hand along the wall. The wall didn't even feel like wall there. It was spongy. Not like it was damp, but more like I was touching the side of some sleeping dragon. Fuck this. I wasn't bringing Trixie into this shit, and I'd either get a professional to clean it up or just rip out this whole fucking... Something had slithered out of the slick darkness at the heart of the stain and was crawling up my arm, biting me as it went. I spun away, trying to shake it off, but it wasn't just me that was turning. The whole room was turning. The whole world was turning. Everything became brighter and brighter until I had to close my eyes, and when I opened them, we were back home. All 3 of the kids had been quiet on the way back from their grandmother's house, though I wasn't sure why. Why had we dropped them off there on a soccer day anyway? It didn't matter. I was just tired and glad to be home again. Once inside, Marcia told me to go sit down and relax while she heated us up some leftovers. I wasn't going to complain. I felt sure I'd fall asleep as soon as I sat down on the sofa, but 10 minutes later I was still idly channel flipping when the corner of my room caught my eye. There had been a stain there, hadn't there? I couldn't see it in this light, but it was almost like I could still feel it, lurking under the surface of some thin layer of paint or polish. I wanted to go check the spot more closely, but that could wait. I didn't want Marcia to know. It might worry her, after all. A small bell rang close by and I jumped at the sound, not because it was loud, but because it was unexpected. I heard it again, this time closer, and as I turned to look for the source, a large black cat leapt onto the arm of the sofa. What the? I winced as I felt something start to break loose in my mind. Strange ideas, other memories, they were dim figures circling the glowing edges of my conscious mind's circle of light, but I could tell they were getting closer to stepping into view. I needed time to think, and I didn't need to act weird until I knew what was going on. I turned and looked into the kitchen where Marcia was. She hadn't noticed my reaction, and something whispered that I should keep it that way. Reaching out gingerly, I gave the cat a brief, gentle pat on the head. Hey there, big fella. Glancing back into the kitchen, I saw her back was to me. I took the opportunity to slide to the other end of the sofa away from the creature still staring at me with bright green eyes. It had a simple collar, and on its tag, a name. Birdie. I heard the kids coming back downstairs, and before I knew it, they were in there climbing on me, asking if I felt better now. I lied and said that I did, as I didn't want to worry any of them. Didn't want them to know. Know that I wasn't sure I was married to the woman fixing dinner in the kitchen, or that any of them were my children at all. In fact, the more I laughed and joked and played with them, the more unsure I became that any of this was actually my life, and the more certain I became of something else. I didn't have a fucking cat.